Airtox's 6 digits trembled as he stared at the acceptance message on his hollow terminal. The prestigious Galactic University had accepted his application for the Concordium's highly classified cultural exchange program. He felt a strange mix of pride and apprehension. It wasn't every day that a Zern, a species revered for their logic and precision, was offered an opportunity like this. But it wasn't the honor of the program that thrilled him, it was the destination. Earth. The name itself was shrouded in controversy, whispered in hushed tones among his peers and professors. A forbidden planet. A cautionary tale. The Concordium had outlawed Earth studies for as long as he could remember, citing the planet's chaotic history and unpredictable inhabitants as reasons for its isolation. But no official records explained why Earth had been cut off from the rest of the galaxy. For Airtox, that mystery was irresistible. When the professor overseeing the program explained the risks, Airtox's excitement only grew. The Concordium takes the Earth ban very seriously, the professor warned. If this experiment is exposed, your career, your future, everything could be destroyed. Do you understand? Airtox nodded, suppressing the urge to ask questions. He knew better than to betray how much he wanted this. I understand, he said, his voice steady. Days later, the procedure to disguise him as a human began. Advanced bioengineering would allow him to blend seamlessly into Earth's society. His true form, a tall, translucent being with segmented limbs and glowing patterns across his skin, was replaced with the compact, solid structure of a human teenager. He stared at his reflection in disbelief, his new face a blank canvas of possibilities. It was both exhilarating and disorienting. The transport to Earth was a blur. One moment, he was surrounded by the sterile precision of a Zern research facility, the next, he was in the thick of a bustling high school hallway. The sounds hit him first, a cacophony of voices, laughter, and slamming lockers. Humans moved with a kind of chaotic energy that Airtox found both fascinating and unnerving. He kept his head down as he navigated the crowd, clutching a backpack filled with supplies meant to help him blend in. His first class was something called history, a subject that piqued his curiosity. He slid into a seat near the back, observing the humans around him. They were so expressive. Their faces seemed to shift endlessly, reflecting emotions he couldn't begin to decode. The teacher, a stern woman with graying hair, began to lecture about something called the Industrial Revolution. Airtox struggled to follow. Human history was messy, filled with triumphs and disasters, progress and destruction. It lacked the clean, logical progression of Zern records. Yet, there was something compelling about the way humans spoke of their past, not as a series of events, but as a story, rich with meaning and lessons. At lunch, Airtox encountered his first real challenge. The food was a sensory overload, bright colors, pungent smells, and a bewildering array of textures. He selected something called a burger, hoping it was a safe choice. As he took a bite, his taste receptors lit up in ways he'd never experienced. Sweet, salty, savory, it was unlike anything on Zern. He was so absorbed in the experience that he barely noticed the group of students sitting down at his table. "Hey, new kid," one of them said, grinning. "You're quiet. Where you from?" Airtox hesitated, his prepared cover story flashing in his mind. "Ah, a small town, far from here," he said, trying to mimic the casual tone of human speech. The group seemed satisfied with his answer and launched into a lively conversation about a school event called a pep rally. Airtox listened intently, fascinated by their energy and camaraderie. It was so different from the reserved, analytical interactions of his own people. As the day progressed, Airtox began to notice other, subtler aspects of human behavior. They communicated in layers, using tone, expression, and even silence to convey meaning. It was a level of complexity that Zern logic couldn't fully grasp. Yet, it wasn't chaotic. It was intricate, like a web of connections that held their society together despite its apparent disorder. By the time he returned to his temporary residence, a modest suburban home arranged by the program, Airtox felt a strange sense of exhaustion. His human form required more rest than his Zern body, and his mind was overwhelmed by the sheer density of new information. As he lay on the unfamiliar softness of a human bed, he replayed the day's events in his mind. Humans were nothing like he'd imagined. They were emotional, unpredictable, and at times, frustratingly illogical. But they were also deeply creative, resilient, and uniquely alive in a way that defied his understanding. For the first time, Aartox began to wonder if the Concordium's ban on Earth studies wasn't just about protecting the galaxy from humans. Perhaps it was also about protecting the Concordium from what humans represented, a challenge to everything they thought they knew about order, logic, and the nature of progress. Sleep took him as he wrestled with these thoughts, his dreams filled with flashes of human faces, voices, and questions he couldn't yet answer. Aartox awoke to a strange sensation, something warm and bright filtering through the window. Sunlight. He'd read about it in his preparation materials but had never experienced it directly. On Zern, light was artificial and controlled, tailored for efficiency. Here, it bathed everything in a golden glow, casting soft shadows and lending a curious vibrancy to the world. He couldn't help but stare for a moment before realizing he needed to hurry. Humans valued punctuality, albeit inconsistently. At school, he began to immerse himself in the rhythms of human life. His first class of the day was science, a subject that should have been familiar. Yet the human approach was baffling. The lesson revolved around concepts he'd mastered in childhood, but the teacher's enthusiasm made it feel more like a performance than an exchange of knowledge. The students, too, were engaged in ways Aartox hadn't anticipated. Some debated ideas with passion, others doodled in notebooks, seemingly disinterested yet still absorbing the information. It struck him as paradoxical, chaotic, yet somehow effective. During a group project, Aartox observed the peculiar dynamics of human collaboration. The students were assigned to build a model demonstrating tectonic plate movement. His group approached the task with a mixture of disorder and ingenuity. One student immediately began organizing materials, another argued about the best method, and a third ignored the discussion entirely, experimenting with a small motor. Aartox watched, perplexed, as their conflicting approaches gradually converged into a functioning model. The process was inefficient by Zern standards, but the outcome was undeniably impressive. Outside the classroom, human interactions continued to puzzle him. In the cafeteria, he noticed how social groups formed and shifted like living organisms. Alliances seemed fluid, based on shared interests or fleeting moments rather than logical compatibility. When a student accidentally spilled their drink, others rushed to help, laughing off the incident as if it were a bonding experience. This display of spontaneous cooperation stood in stark contrast to the calculated precision of Zern problem-solving. Humans, it seemed, thrived on unpredictability. One afternoon, Aartox experienced an event called a pep rally, which was unlike anything he had encountered. Hundreds of students gathered in a gymnasium, their collective energy palpable. The noise was deafening, the movements chaotic, yet the atmosphere was one of unity. They cheered for their school's sports team, celebrating not victory but the promise of effort and camaraderie. Aartox found himself clapping along, swept up in the raw emotion of the moment. It was illogical, but it felt significant. As the days passed, Aartox began to uncover deeper layers of human culture. Music, in particular, fascinated him. On Zern, sound was functional, a tool for communication or signaling. But humans used it to evoke feelings, tell stories, and create connections. One evening, a classmate shared a song with him, a slow, melodic piece filled with longing and hope. Aartox felt something he couldn't quite define, a stirring in his human form that seemed to resonate with the song's emotion. It was a sensation both alien and oddly comforting. Art was another revelation. In a class called Visual Arts, students were tasked with creating something that represented their identity. Aartox watched as they painted, sculpted, and sketched, each piece uniquely reflecting its creator. He attempted his own, drawing on the symmetrical patterns of Zern design, but it felt lifeless compared to the vibrant, imperfect works of his peers. When a classmate praised his effort, he felt an unfamiliar warmth, a sense of validation that transcended logic. Through all this, Artax began to notice a recurring theme: humanity's capacity to find meaning in imperfection. Where Zern culture saw perfection and order, humans seemed to embrace flaws and contradictions, using them as fuel for growth. It was evident in their relationships, too. Friendships were messy and complicated, filled with misunderstandings and reconciliations. Yet these bonds were deeply valued, forming the backbone of their society. One moment that stayed with him occurred during a history lesson. The teacher showed a documentary about a natural disaster, a hurricane that had devastated a region decades ago. The footage was harrowing, depicting destruction and loss. But what struck Artax was the aftermath. Humans from across the globe had come together to rebuild, offering aid and support to strangers. It was an instinct that defied logic, an almost reckless compassion that seemed intrinsic to their nature. At night, Artax often reflected on these observations. He found himself questioning the narratives he'd been taught on Zern. The Concordium's warnings about Earth painted humans as dangerous, unstable beings. Yet, in their chaos, Artax saw something extraordinary, a resilience that allowed them to thrive in conditions that would break most species. They adapted not just to survive but to create, to connect, to push boundaries in ways that defied reason. He couldn't ignore the darker aspects of humanity, of course. Their history was rife with conflict, and their present was far from perfect. But even in their mistakes, there was a drive to learn, to improve. It was a quality he had never encountered elsewhere in the galaxy, and it both fascinated and unsettled him. By the end of the week, Artax felt he was beginning to understand humanity, not fully, but enough to see why Earth studies were banned. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability was the source of their strength. They were creators of chaos, yet within that chaos lay a potential unlike anything he had ever imagined. Artax's understanding of Earth deepened as he delved into its history and culture, yet the more he learned, the more questions arose. Human records were fragmented, contradictory, and often incomplete, creating a patchwork narrative of triumphs and tragedies. He spent hours poring over books and digital archives, marveling at the sheer scope of human achievement and destruction. This duality fascinated him, humanity's ability to create wonders while simultaneously courting disaster. One particular evening, as he explored an abandoned section of the school's library, he stumbled upon a dusty, forgotten volume titled The Collapse of Empires. The book chronicled the rise and fall of powerful human civilizations, each brought low by greed, war, or environmental neglect. Yet, it wasn't despair that defined these stories. Time and again, humans rebuilt from the ashes, adapting and innovating in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. This resilience stirred something in Artax, a sense of admiration he hadn't anticipated. The turning point came when he discovered a hidden cache of Concordium data buried deep within the Earth's digital infrastructure. The encrypted files bore the unmistakable signatures of Zern technology, their presence on Earth both shocking and forbidden. With careful precision, Artax decrypted the information, revealing a series of reports detailing humanity's tumultuous history from an outsider's perspective. The reports painted a grim picture. Long ago, Earth had been part of the galactic community, its inhabitants welcomed as equals. Humanity's creativity and rapid technological advancements initially earned them admiration. They brought fresh perspectives to stagnating galactic projects, solving problems that had confounded older civilizations for millennia. But this brilliance came with a cost. Human ingenuity often outpaced their caution, leading to experiments with unforeseen consequences. The most damning revelation was humanity's dabbling in interdimensional travel. Artax read with growing horror about the catastrophe that unfolded when humans pierced the barriers between dimensions. The incident, referred to only as the Rift, unleashed a cascade of energy that destabilized entire sectors of the galaxy. The Concordium intervened to contain the disaster, but not before countless lives were lost. In the aftermath, humanity was deemed too dangerous, their homeworld quarantined, their contributions erased from galactic records. Artax's mind reeled at the implications. The ban wasn't merely about protecting the galaxy from humanity, it was about hiding the galaxy's fear of humanity's potential. The Concordium's decision to isolate Earth had been a desperate measure, a way to ensure such a catastrophe could never happen again. Yet, as Aartox reflected on what he had witnessed during his time on Earth, he couldn't reconcile this fear with the people he had come to know. They were flawed, yes, but they were also capable of profound empathy and unparalleled innovation. The reports didn't end there. A shadowy Concordium faction, known as the Preservationist Council, had continued monitoring Earth in secret. Their motives were troubling. While the Concordium's official stance was to suppress humanity's advancement, this faction sought to exploit it. They viewed humanity's ingenuity as a resource to be weaponized, a tool to tip the balance of power in the galaxy. Aartox discovered evidence of covert operations aimed at infiltrating Earth's scientific communities, stealing knowledge, and subtly influencing technological development to suit their ends. The implications were staggering. Not only was humanity being watched, but they were also being manipulated, their progress both encouraged and constrained by forces they couldn't see. Aartox's pulse quickened as he realized the full scope of the Concordium's hypocrisy. The very society that prided itself on order and fairness was secretly exploiting the species it had deemed too dangerous to engage openly. In the days that followed, Aartox's sense of duty began to shift. He had come to Earth to observe and learn, to fulfill the requirements of a program designed to satisfy his curiosity. But now, he felt an obligation to act. Humanity deserved to know the truth about their history and their place in the galaxy. More importantly, they deserved the chance to chart their own course, free from the shadow of Concordium interference. Yet, the path forward was fraught with peril. If Aartox exposed the Concordium's actions, he risked not only his mission but his very life. The Preservationist Council would stop at nothing to silence him, and the consequences for Earth could be catastrophic. On the other hand, if he chose to remain silent, humanity's destiny would continue to be shaped by forces beyond their control, their potential stifled and their future uncertain. As he wrestled with these dilemmas, Aartox found himself drawing strength from the humans around him. Their resilience, their capacity for hope even in the face of overwhelming odds, it was infectious. They reminded him that even the smallest actions could spark change, that even in darkness, light could be found. For the first time, he began to see his mission not as a mere academic exercise but as a calling, a chance to make a difference in a way that transcended logic and reason. The decision loomed large in his mind. Aartox knew that whatever path he chose, it would alter the course of his life, and perhaps the galaxy, forever. Aartox spent countless hours grappling with the knowledge he had uncovered. The weight of the decision before him grew heavier by the day. Humanity stood at a precipice. The galactic community, including the Concordium, had long deemed Earth's inhabitants too volatile, too dangerous to interact with. But after everything he had witnessed, Aartox couldn't shake the feeling that this view was wrong, unfair, even. The humans he encountered had their flaws, certainly, but they had a raw potential that Aartox had never seen before in any species. He knew that Earth had been advancing steadily in technology. A part of him had hoped that they were still years away from developing space travel, yet the deeper he dug, the clearer it became that humanity's breakthroughs were accelerating. They were on the cusp of breaking free from the confines of their planet, unaware that the galaxy had already passed judgment on them. Earth's quarantine could soon be over, and if the Concordium, especially the Preservationist Council, found out about their progress, they would surely move to suppress it again, or worse, exploit it. The true gravity of the situation hit Aartox when he stumbled upon a clandestine Concordium report detailing human advancements in quantum computing. It was stunning. The humans had, through their own trial and error, developed a technology that could rival some of the most advanced systems in the galaxy. And they were just beginning to scratch the surface. If they mastered it fully, they would not only break free of the galactic quarantine, they would pose a real threat to the established order. They could potentially disrupt the power balance between civilizations in the galaxy, something the Concordium would never allow. Aartox was torn. He had come to Earth with a simple mission, to observe. But his experiences had changed him. The human's ability to create, to dream, to rebuild and adapt in the face of overwhelming odds, was a force unlike any Aartox had encountered. He saw in them a unique strength, one that transcended logic, one that could rival even the most structured and established civilizations. It was a threat to the Concordium's power, yes, but also a force for innovation and change. Aartox knew that if Earth was allowed to grow unchecked, it could lead to a revolution within the galaxy, toppling outdated systems of control. Humanity's potential, if nurtured properly, could rewrite the future of the galaxy. Yet, if Aartox spoke out, he would be risking everything: the mission, his future, and the safety of his own people. The Concordium was not known for its leniency. They would never allow a species they had labeled as dangerous to have such power, and they certainly wouldn't tolerate any of their own citizens defying their orders. He had already seen how the Preservationist Council operated. They were willing to go to extreme lengths to prevent any threat to their power, and Earth was their biggest concern. If they believed humanity was close to discovering interstellar travel or a way to influence galactic politics, they would act swiftly and harshly. Yet, despite all the risks, Aartox couldn't bring himself to stand idly by. The humans he had interacted with had shown him the very essence of progress, not through cold logic or rigid systems, but through raw, untapped creativity and heart. They were a species of immense promise, capable of achieving great things. If left to their own devices, they could solve problems the Concordium could never even begin to address. The galaxy, despite all its advanced civilizations, had grown stagnant. Earth was the wild card, the catalyst that could ignite a new era. Aartox's decision became clearer with each passing day. He couldn't simply report Earth's progress to the Concordium. That would be a death sentence for humanity, condemning them to a future of suppression and isolation, their potential forever unfulfilled. And yet, he couldn't keep the knowledge to himself. Earth deserved a chance to stand among the stars, to be part of a larger, more diverse galactic community. It wasn't just about saving humanity, it was about ensuring the survival of innovation, diversity, and change. He began seeking out others who might share his views: students, faculty members, even a few sympathetic Concordium officers who had expressed doubts about the Council's hardline stance. Slowly but surely, he gathered a small but passionate group of allies. They were reluctant to act at first, knowing the risks, but the more they learned about the Concordium's true motives, the more convinced they became that something had to be done. Aartox had also begun to make allies among Earth's inhabitants. While most of the humans around him were oblivious to the greater implications of their technological advancements, a few had begun to notice the strange presence of a foreign observer. They hadn't yet learned the full scope of what Aartox had discovered, but some had suspected there was more to his mission than he had let on. With careful guidance, he shared just enough to stir their curiosity and convince them of the gravity of the situation. The tipping point came when a group of these human allies, armed with knowledge from the Concordium archives, uncovered evidence that the Preservationist Council had already infiltrated Earth's highest scientific circles. They had been planting misinformation, controlling certain breakthroughs, and subtly influencing the course of human development. This made Aartox's resolve even stronger. He could no longer remain silent. The Concordium had not only isolated Earth, they had manipulated its future, suppressing its growth for their own gain. The time had come to act. Aartox knew the risks. He was no longer just an observer, a student fulfilling an academic requirement. He had become a part of something much larger. If he exposed the truth about the Concordium's actions, he would spark a confrontation that could alter the fate of the galaxy. But if he didn't act, Earth's future would be decided by a cold, unfeeling bureaucracy, and humanity would never know the true extent of its potential. Aartox's choice was clear. He would stand with humanity, and together, they would fight for a future that wasn't controlled by the rigid systems of the past. Through courage and conviction, they would prove that even the most chaotic, unpredictable species could offer something of value to the universe, a new kind of hope, forged in the fires of struggle and uncertainty.